1. Chelsea missed flying full-backs more than Lukaku on the first Sunday of 2021. A first-half Chelsea capitulation against Manchester City hastened Frank Lampard's exit and deepened a despondent mood. 12 months on, Liverpool's 2 early goals at Stamford Bridge could have induced Groundhog Day feelings. Instead, Thomas Tuchel's side roared back and showed that, whatever other problems have recently beset the Chelsea manager on and off the field, this is a team that plays for him. Though they did so in a rather un-Tuchel-like manner. The intense atmosphere generated by the Premier League debut of safe standing was met with the kind of front-foot, high-tempo performance more associated with a Jürgen Klopp side. Chelsea were the better team against Liverpool, but they will rue the openness at the back that meant they had to settle for another draw, which probably ends their title hopes, and more than the much-discussed Romelu Lukaku, it is their first-choice full-backs, then Chilwell and Reece James, that they are missing most. Davies too. Mane makes his presence felt in more ways than one. Liverpool were not at their fluent, cohesive best at Chelsea, though they played their part in a compelling spectacle. But they came away with a point because they have what Chelsea lacked, forwards with a ruthless and instinctive eye for goal. It was no surprise Mohamed Salah scored another fabulous goal, and could have added an even better one with an instinctive long-range chip that Edouard Mendy saved sharply, but Sadio Mané's was the more intriguing display after a lean run. His goal showcased the Senegalese at his clinical best, punishing Trevor Chalobah's botched clearance, and he was a busy presence throughout. Yet there were also rash moments, from the risky raising of an elbow against Cesar Azpilicueta in the 6th second of the match to the slightly weak, hasty finishes at the end of a couple of slick breakaways early in the second half. Overall, he showed enough to demonstrate why Senegal will cherish him, and Liverpool miss him, during the Africa Cup of Nations. TD3, Arsenal should focus on positives after City's smash and grab. There are times when you can take genuine succor from listening to your opponents. Arsenal were better, Pep Guardiola said after Manchester City's smash and grab at the Emirates. We faced an incredible team, agreed Rodri, the match winner. Guardiola has historically gone out of his way to praise Mikel Arteta, a close friend, but no exaggeration was required on Saturday. City were overwhelmed for half of the game, and Arsenal would do well to focus on that rather than the VAR calls, correct but convoluted, that helped turn the outcome. Officials are not biased against your team. Whoever you support, even if it's tempting to feel that way after such a rousing display, counts for nothing. It is better to focus on what gives pleasure. Nick Ames 4. VAR gives Watford fans, and referees, cause for outrage. Another example of how VAR creates controversy. When Hugo Lloris dived at the feet of João Pedro and the referee, Robert Jones, who seemed in a good position, decisively gestured that the goalkeeper had won the ball, there was no reason not to think the decision had been correct. The ball had squirted out of the challenge at the sort of angle that suggested Lloris had taken it cleanly. But slowed down, a different picture emerged. Lloris, almost certainly, did foul Pedro, but that was almost impossible to tell in real time. Before VAR, while Watford fans may still have been outraged, others would have shrugged and accepted that in a fast-moving game, some things are impossible to give. Now, though, VAR creates an expectation of perfection, and that makes the already difficult job of refereeing even harder. Jonathan Wilson 5. Ollie's can be Palace's next young star. Patrick Vieira's decision to replace Luka Milivojevic and Christian Benteke with Michael Ollie's and Jean-Philippe Mateta in the second half almost rescued a point for Palace, 3 goals down at the break to West Ham. Ollie's has now been directly involved in a goal every 63 minutes in the Premier League this season, having set up Odsonne Edouard before scoring directly from a free kick. Not bad for a player who hadn't even trained for the last week and a half. Michael is a top young player with a lot of talent, said Vieira. It was a gamble for us, as we didn't know how he was physically. I was really pleased with the way he came into the game because he created chances, he created situations, and he scored a goal. He showed in the space of 20 minutes his quality, and that's really good for the football club. Ed Aarons 6. Brentford look safe for second half of the season. Brentford can be delighted with the first half of their Premier League bow. After 19 games they are 12th with 23 points, and, even though there is plenty of football to be played, you would struggle to find a single onlooker who believes they will not secure another season in the top flight. That said, the victory over Aston Villa felt crucial given they had only won 2 games in their previous 11. It was earned through sheer grit, and Thomas Frank had a fair point when he said afterwards that only Leeds have suffered comparable injury woes. Promoted sides often wilt when the ravages of the winter begin to kick in, but Brentford, who dazzled with their flowing football in the Championship but have shown different sides to their game in the Premier League, have displayed the mentality of giants to pull through and prove doubters wrong. Nick Ames 7. McAllisters form another feather in Potter's cap, whereas Rafael Benitez prefers to freeze out Lucas Digne to such an extent that Seamus Coleman started at left wing back against Brighton, with the France international an unused substitute for Everton's 8th defeat in 11 games. Graham Potter's ability to keep unhappy players onside underpinned his club's first ever victory at Goodison Park. Alexis McAllister was, by his manager's own admission, frustrated with his limited playing time earlier in the season, but marked his third successive start in a demanding week with a match-winning display against Benitez's toiling team. "It just goes to show that football changes quickly," the Brighton manager said. "Alexis has worked hard, stuck with the team, and because he has been professional he can come in and perform. He scored 2 great goals, but his overall performance was fantastic." Andy Hunter 8. Burnley could melt away without Cornet to count on. It is far-fetched to ever suggest one team's fortunes are defined by a single player, but the case of Maxwell Cornet and Burnley is about as close as you could find right now. Cornet's 6th goal of the season in 11 Premier League appearances looked as though it would rescue a point at Leeds before the visitors were undone by 2 late strikes. The worry for Burnley is that Cornet, a player who they clearly rely on for moments of magic, is now headed for the Africa Cup of Nations. That makes Burnley's January business all the more important, but, even with new additions, you suspect their hopes of survival will revolve largely around one man as the season heads for the final stretch. Aaron Bauer 9. Wolves a stern test for troubled Rangnick regime. Manchester United are unbeaten in 5 games under Ralph Rangnick, and yet the mood music continues to be downbeat. The 3-1 home win over an understrength Burnley barely salved the wounds of a dreadful performance and fortunate draw at Newcastle, a feast for amateur body language experts. Rangnick was an antsy sideline presence during the Burnley game, repeatedly urging his players to chase the second ball far harder. He has already shifted his 4-2-2-2 to something more akin to 4-4-2. Wolves did not play during the festive season, but they will likely be harder to beat for United than 2 teams in the bottom 3. Before Wolves' hiatus, it looked a last-minute goal for Liverpool to win at Molineux, while Manchester City required a penalty to squeak past them. They don't score many, but they don't concede many either. John Bruin 10. January window finally here for Newcastle. Whenever Newcastle return to action, the expectation is Eddie Howe will be able to pick from a far fuller deck, with COVID isolation periods ending, the injury list easing, and a first tranche of Saudi Arabian loot spent on new players. The names linked most closely are not quite of the Kylian Mbappe and Neymar level just yet, but someone as accomplished and experienced as Kieran Trippier would add quality to their defense. Eddie Howe's working relationship with the England fullback from their time at Burnley a decade ago may facilitate that deal, but other transfers may be harder to pull off. Convincing players to join a team second bottom of the league and with 1 win all season will take serious cash.